Hey, I'm Kev, Mr. Car, and welcome to the second part of my look back at the 2015 Verizon IndyCar Series season. In the first episode, we looked at Dale Coyne Racing and the Indy 500 one-off efforts. In this episode, we're looking at a couple of lower midfield teams, beginning with a team we always expect to do better than they normally do, as Larry Foyt looks like he's put together the missing pieces to produce a very solid season. But once again in 2015, is a very up and down year for AJ Foyt Enterprises. Before the 2015 season, AJ Foyt Enterprises made a few changes. Firstly, they expanded from a single car full-time operation to a two-car full-time operation for the first time since 2002. And the Texas-based team, the only team in the Verizon IndyCar Series based down south there, well, they acquired a shop in Indianapolis, quite near to where the now Air Comet Racing team has a shop, and right near to the famous Speedway. And so that's going to be their base of operations during the season, while of course they're based in Houston, still their main base though. So it's a bit of a transition year maybe in 2015, getting used to all of these changes, getting used to running two cars once again, getting used to having a main base in Indianapolis during the year as well. So yeah, lots of changes for the team heading into 2015, and of course it didn't help that they're with Honda, and the aero kit was a bit worse than Chevrolet, and being in that midfield battle as well, that would not have helped them get above the likes of, say, KV Racing, who they're kind of battling, or CFH Racing as well. For AJ Foyt Enterprises, yeah, another up and down year in 2015. As I said, we expect more from them every year, but perhaps in 2015 a bit of a transition year for the team. And in their two cars, they had the number 14 of Takuma Sato and the number 41 of Jack Hawksworth, joining the team from Bryan Herta Autosport. But firstly, Sato, the veteran in the IndyCar Series, was in his 6th season in 2015 and his 3rd with the team. And in 2015, he finished 14th with 1 podium, 1 fastest lap, 1 top 5 finish, and 5 top 10 finishes, and 323 points. He competed in all 16 races, and he finished 12 of them with 10 lead lap finishes. His best start was 4th in the first race in Detroit, 5th in St. Pete, 8th in Toronto, and 9th in Fontana and Pocono. His best finish was 2nd in the second race in Detroit, 6th at Pocono, 8th at Sonoma, and 9th in the Indy GP, with his other top 10 finish coming in Toronto. His average start was 14.0, 17th out of all drivers in 2015, and his average finish was 13.8, 18th out of all drivers in 2015. His 4 retirements were all due to crashes at Noda, Fontana, Iowa, and Mid-Ohio. He also led 46 laps, 12 of them in the first race in Detroit, 31 in Fontana, and 3 in Pocono. So we know what to expect from Sato. Now, if you've even seen him in F1, you know what to expect from Sato. But during his 6 years in IndyCar, he really hasn't changed that much. He perhaps has got a bit better on the street courses. That seems to be his best area in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Also on the long ovals, he's very decent, as we see at the Indy 500, as we've seen at, of course, Fontana, and at Pocono as well near the end of the year. But the things where he's not quite good at is perhaps the short ovals, such as the Milwaukee Mile, such as Iowa, and he's perhaps glad that the mile was off the schedule. Perhaps not happy to see Felix coming in his place though right at the beginning of the year. So Sato is a known quantity now in the Verizon IndyCar Series, but I so wish that he was better than he is. I so wish that the great days he has, such as in Detroit, such as the beginning of the year in St. Pete, getting the Honda-powered car into that fast 6 somehow. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way in the race, went a bit south, unlike his teammates. But, Sato on his good days is brilliant. As we saw in the second race in Detroit, battling for the win there behind Bourdais and, driving superbly in the wet. And we also saw that later in the year, of course, in Pocono, leading a few laps, and at Fontana, perhaps his best race of the season, which unfortunately finished in an incident, I think it was with wheel power. And, he led 31 laps, still was in the fight for a win, but he did the Sato thing of unfortunately crashing out of it, and that's the microcosm of Sato. Perhaps that race, perhaps the 2012 Indy 500, where he has this superb speed, but he's just so short of greatness, it feels like. And you know, as someone who's followed him for almost 15 years now, his career from British F3 upwards, you know, I'm always so disappointed at seeing Sato, you know, be sublime one weekend and be frustratingly anonymous the next. And that is the same with AJ Foyt Enterprises. So yeah, Sato and AJ Foyt Enterprises might be made for each other, and unfortunately in 2016 you kind of know what to expect from Sato. Heading into his 7th season, I'm not sure how much longer he's got in the Verizon IndyCar series, and that's a bit of a shame, you know, as he approaches the big 4-0 as well next year. So for Sato, just more of the same, as his best season was 13th in 2011, his second season in the Verizon IndyCar series with KV Racing technology. So finishing 14th in 2015 was just more of the same from Takuma Sato from the 14th car. And as I said, I'm so disappointed that that is the way. But as much as I'm continually disappointed by Sato and AJ Foyt Enterprises as well, I know, as I said, 2015, perhaps a transitional year for the team. I think the most disappointing aspect of this outfit last year was the number 41 car, was Jack Hawksworth, as the Englishman finished 17th in the standings with 1 fastest lap and 5 top 10 finishes and 256 points. He competed in all 16 races, finished 12 of them and had 9 lead lap finishes. His best start was 8th in NOLA, 11th at the Indy GP and Mid-Ohio, 14th at the first race in Detroit, Toronto and Pocono. His best finish was 7th in the Detroit races, 8th at St. Pete and Mid-Ohio and 10th in Fontana. His average start was 17.2, 26th out of all of the drivers that took part in the 2015 season. His average finish was 15.9, 25th. And his 4 retirements were due to crashes at NOLA, the Indy 500 and Pocono, and a suspension issue at Texas. He also led 16 laps, 5 of them in the season opener in St. Pete, 4 of them in Long Beach, and 7 of them at Iowa. So why am I so disappointed in Hawksworth's 2015 season? Well, as I've said, we know what to expect from Sato and AJ Foyt Enterprises, but we didn't know what to expect from Hawksworth in 2015. But heading into the season, I think I and a few other people had our eye on Hawksworth as someone to look out for, to perhaps do really well in 2015, and he just didn't really deliver. In fact, he perhaps was just as good as he was in his rookie year. As the 2012 Pro Mazda champion, he finished 4th in Indy Lights in 2013. Now heading into 2014, it was a bit of a surprise seeing him be picked up by Bryan Herta Autosport, but he did a decent job that year as he finished 7th in the Grand Prix of Indianapolis after leading that for quite a while, but unfortunately strategy forced his way further down the order in the end. And then in the doubleheader in Houston in the middle of the season, he finished 6th in the first race, and then in the second race he battled hard. He got his elbows out as he was battling on Pablo Montoya for a podium spot, and he got that 3rd place, his only podium in the Verizon IndyCar series so far. He also finished 6th in Toronto and 10th in Milwaukee by the end of the year, showing some oval prowess, which he hasn't really shown since, unfortunately. So, after that rookie year, after finishing 17th in the standings, just like he did last year, we were thinking, he could perhaps build on that into 2015, having a very experienced guy in Sato alongside him. He's been in the series for quite a long time. Lots of racing experience as well behind that Japanese driver, and a great guy for Hawksworth to learn off of, especially for those big overs. As I said, perhaps Hawksworth's weakest point, but his strongest point is definitely his street racing, as he showed in the first race of the year at St. Pete, where he finished in the top 10 with some great strategy as well from the team. While for Sato, I think he suffered on the strategy and had a long pit stop, if I remember correctly, or badly timed pit stop. So, for Hawksworth, finishing in the top 10 in his first race, leading a few laps as well, and looking quite comfortable in the lead. Perhaps expectations are elevated too high for him, after that first race, as it wasn't until, that double-header weekend in Detroit where we saw him come to life once again and round some streets, as well as in the first race he got that fastest lap, he finished 7th, and in the second race he repeated that performance with 7th once again. And then he got a top 10 in Fontana by just surviving, it seemed like. And then he performed on a road course with 8th in Mid-Ohio. Again, strategy, cautions played out, favourably for him, but, he delivered in that race. Unfortunately, he didn't end the year well, in Sonoma and in Pocono with a big crash. So, for Hawksworth, 2015 was just not, really delivering enough from a team that wasn't delivering enough, from a team that wasn't delivering enough, really. But I was saying we expected more from Hawksworth heading into 2015, and that's why it's a bit, disappointing seeing him, struggle in the end. It looked like finishing 17th, that's the second worst placing, I believe, for a full-time driver in the 2015 standings, with only the kind of abysmal Stefano Coletti below him. So, lots to look at in 2016 to improve upon, and of course, I hope he does better, especially on the ovals as well. He had a miserable Indy 500 as well after quite a decent one in 2014. He started 28th last year and then crashed out in a incident that involved Coletti and Saavedra, out of turn 4. He just got collected in that. So for Hawksworth heading into 2016, as I say, you got experienced guy in Sato. Hopefully the team are now used to how they work now, with Indianapolis being their home base during the year and Houston being it out of it. And with a year's worth of experience with the team now, helping build the chemistry as well, I'm really hoping we see Hawksworth do, step up, do challenge Sato, in the standards a lot more, and perhaps be the better guy in AJ Foyt Enterprises in 2016, and perhaps be the guy that we expected in 2015. And hang on, before we move on to Bryan Herta Autosport, I almost forgot that AJ Foyt Enterprises had the number 48 car at the Indianapolis 500, driven by Canadian veteran Alex Tagliani. And he had a pretty decent outing. He started 20th, finished 17th in the race, and led 2 laps. And I hope he returns for the Indy 500 in 2016, perhaps in the same car for AJ Foyt. But yeah, I'm always enjoying seeing Alex Tagliani in IndyCar, even though he's on the wrong side of 40 now, perhaps isn't going to have a full-time effort anymore. But I do enjoy seeing him in these one-off outings. And as I said, in 2015, he did quite well at the Indy 500. And the second and final team we are looking at in this episode is run by a very well-respected individual in IndyCar circles. He used to be a former driver in kart for a number of years before becoming a part of the Andretti juggernaut in IndyCar of the mid-thousands. He then became a team owner and won the Indy 500 in 2011 with his friend, the late Dan Weldon. But in the past couple of seasons, Bryan Herta Autosport has run a single car effort in IndyCar with normally a new driver every season, and that was no different in 2015, as once again he had a rookie in his sole seat throughout the whole of the year, the only single car effort for the whole of the year, including the Indy 500. And so it was a very trying year for Indy Lights champion in 2014, Gabby Chavez. It certainly was for the Colombian, as he finished 15th in the standings with only 2 top 10 finishes and 281 points. He competed in all 16 races, 15 races at the finish, with 10 of them on the lead lap. His best start was 12th in Milwaukee, 16th at the Indy GP and Pocono, and 17th at NOLA, Long Beach and Alabama. His best finish was 9th in the second race in Detroit, 10th in Texas, 11th at Milwaukee and Pocono, and 12th at Mid-Ohio. His average start was 19.3, 30th out of all the drivers that took part in the 2015 season, and worst of all the full-time drivers. His average finish was 14.4, 21st. His one retirement came at Pocono with an engine failure, as he led 31 laps in that race, and in the closing stages we were perhaps considering this rookie would win this race. He really was in the hunt, but unfortunately, as I said, his engine just let go, and it was such a major disappointment. But if you look at those best finishes and best starts, you'll see that Chavez had a bit of something everywhere. As coming into this 2015 season, the Colombian had a very impressive record in the Mazda Road to Indy, the ladder series to the Verizon IndyCar series. Has, after coming over from Europe in 2011, after having a quite average year with the Annex team in GP3. He finished second in the Pro Mazda Championship in 2012, second in the Indy Lights Championship in 2013 to Sage Karam, and then in 2014 he won the championship with Bellardi Auto Racing ahead of Jack Harvey on countback. And so heading into 2015 he had lots of credentials in those lower Formula. He was also the Formula BMW champion, the last one in 2009, done a few races with the Delta Ring team as well in the effort at the Daytona 24 Hours. And in 2015, as I said, he showed a bit of something everywhere, despite not perhaps getting the results. Being in this single car effort, very difficult, job, has Hawksworth showed before him in 2014. I said finished 17th in the championship. The Yorkshireman, well, the Colombian finished 15th in the championship, actually 2 places ahead of Hawksworth in the end, and that's due to how he raced, how he made it to the finish on almost every race. Apart from that race in Pocono, he would have finished every race of the season. So, he kept the car on the road, despite in Noda having the assistance of Man of the Year, this random guy just pushing him out of the dirt there. He would have finished in Noda otherwise. But, yeah, that's the thing I noticed from Chavez in 2015, is that he could, he didn't damage the equipment. That's perhaps the best thing for a single car ever, low on funds, that your driver doesn't damage the equipment a lot. So that's perhaps the best thing about Chavez in 2015. But as I said, looking at his best finishes is, he finished well in the street race in Detroit in that second race, through the wet, through the rain, finished 9th there in a race that caught out some of the bigger guys as well, caught out lots of people that race with those conditions. And then in the next race on a totally different circuit in Texas, he finished in the top 10, and it looks like this mid-season run, it's going to lead to something. Well, in the second half of the year he was better. After in the first half he wasn't, he did appear like he was struggling a bit, which perhaps you would expect, given the circumstances. But as I said, in that second half of the year he improved. He finished 11th in the short oval at Milwaukee, and on the road course in Mid-Ohio he finished 12th. So yeah, that's all the different types of circuits that Verizon IndyCar Series visits, and he was around the top 10 in all of them. So as I said, perhaps he showed a bit of something everywhere, not just keeping it clean, but that he could race well everywhere. So that's perhaps something good to look forward to in 2016 if he does keep this seat. It's strange how things work out sometimes. Has the guy who he beat to the 2014 Indy Lights Championship, Jack Harvey, is rumoured to perhaps be taking the seat from Chavez in 2016. But for the Rookie of the Year in 2015, to be fair, his only competition was really Stefano Coletti, so no competition at all really. That would be a big shame, I believe, for the Colombian, one of a number of Colombians in the Verizon IndyCar Series, with Juan Pablo Montoya, then all the guys he seems to have influenced, such as, Carlos Munoz, Sebastian Savegia, Chavez, and Carlos Herta, who we talked about in the first episode. So, yeah, lots of Colombians in the Verizon IndyCar Series. But for Chavez, I really do hope he comes back in 2016 with Bryan Herta Autosport, maybe somewhere else, maybe Delcoin Racing. That perhaps would be a better situation where he'd be alongside, say, Connor Daly. You have a second driver to learn from. So for Chavez, I do hope he's in the Verizon IndyCar Series, but if it's not Bryan Herta Autosport, I hope it's somewhere with a second seat. But yeah, it's difficult for Chavez because his seat is all about money, unfortunately, and I'm not sure how well his backing is compared to Jack Harvey, who perhaps doesn't have the best backing either. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what Bryan Herta chooses in 2016, because I think there's a bit of something there in Chavez. As I say, he has an impressive record in the Mazda Road to Indy, in Junior Formula, and as I said, I think he showed a bit of something everywhere in 2015. But for Bryan Herta as a whole, I'm just glad to see that he looks like he's going to keep going in 2016, despite expanding to Global Rallycross, I think it was, in 2015. So he's got operations multiple series now. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that. And yeah, I hope he has a second seat as well, as he was meant to have a second seat in 2015 at the Indy 500 with the 97 of Jay Howard. And the Englishman, the Indy Lights champion from a decade ago now, he's never really got a chance in the Verizon IndyCar Series. He drove for Roth Racing back in 2008, and then 2010 drove for Sarah Fisher, 2011 drove for Smith Peterson and Ray Hollett and Lanigan racing. Well, you know, perhaps 2015 was his last chance here with Bryan Herta to have a ride in the Verizon IndyCar Series and in the 500, as it had been, you know, 4 years was the gap between efforts there. Now it's 5 years, and he's the driver coach now. You know, he coaches young guys, you know, and it'll be interesting to see how they do in future years. But, you know, unfortunately for Howard, you know, this chance with Bryan Herta Autosport might have been his last chance in the Verizon IndyCar Series. We might see him go away like fellow Englishmen like Alex Lloyd before him, like Mark Taylor as well from about a decade ago, and that would be a bit sad. I was interested to see how he would, you know, go after quite a long time away, but his entry got withdrawn in mid-April. As Bryan Herta explains, it got really late. We announced we were going to run Jay. We thought we had a deal to do it. A partner scaled back what they were able to do. For me, it was an easy decision to focus on one car because we have a lot going on. We tried to leave it as late as we could. Frankly, Jay deserves a good shot, and we had hoped to do it for him this year. And I do hope Howard is perhaps one of a number of guys who gets a shot in 2016 in the 100th Indy 500. Hopefully he returns in a seat. But yeah, that's Bryan Herta Autosport in 2015. They're meant to have 2 cars at the Indy 500, but they didn't. So throughout the whole of the year, they had Gavi Chavez, and as I said, I think he showed a bit of something everywhere. And I hope he returns in 2016. But then I'm also a big fan of Jack Harvey, who he beat to that Indy Lights Championship in 2014. So yeah, wherever Chavez ends up in 2016, I think he'll do well anyway. So now we are done with the second episode. Only 5 episodes to go before we are done. And in the next one, we are looking at a couple of the more solid midfield teams in Smith Peterson Motorsports and KV Racing Technology, or KVSH. So, sign up for watching, and I will see you next time.